Yeah. So let me just try this.
Alright. Good evening, everyone. Hope you're well. Hope you're all staying safe. My name is Nagwekar. I am project lead for the Homemaker series at tellmeastory.biz. And welcome to the 10th session of the Homemaking Talk series. We're sort of nearing the end now of the Homemaking Talk series. In the last session, we spoke with the content head of Biocom 18, the content head of MX Player, and the content head of Alt Balaji, three OTT services, and we discussed the representation of homemakers in entertainment media. Today, we shall explore a more specific community, that is the community of the university, and talk about university as homes, creating safe havens for students during COVID-19. This session will focus a little bit on COVID-19, but I would like to know more in general about the community of university. Of course, since this is a session on Facebook Live, questions are welcome. If we have time, we will get to them. Uh, Let me stop blabbering here because clearly no one is here to listen to me. Let me introduce our panelists real quick. First up, we have J. Devika ma'am. Good evening, ma'am. J. Devika is a feminist researcher and teacher at the Center for Development Studies, Kerala, affiliated with JNU. She has contributed to the understanding of the history of gender, development, politics, and the culture of modern Kerala. Her work is interdisciplinary, and she brings to bear her training as a historian on contemporary issues. She is interested in opening up the boundaries between academic and public and pedagogic discourses, the social sciences and humanities, and English and Malayalam. Our second guest for today is Nishi Pulgurtha. Good evening, Nishi ma'am.
Good evening.
Nishi is an academic and a creative writer based in Kolkata. Her work has been published in various journals and magazines. Her publications include a monograph, Her publications include a monograph, a collection of essays on travel, out in the open in 2019, an edited volume of essays on travel, across and beyond, and a volume of poetry, real and the unreal and other poems. Her recent book is a collection of her short stories, The Windowsill, and a second volume of poems is forthcoming. Currently, Nishi is a professor at B.K.C. College, Kolkata. You know, everyone knows by now how the pandemic, when it began in March 2020, it ruptured a lot of lives. And this is not to denigrate the condition of lower class workers or migrant workers who may have had to face worse problems, objectively worse problems than people like perhaps you or me. But this page is called Tell Me Your Story, and that is what we fully intend to do. So, Professor Devika and Professor Nishi, tell us your story as professors, as professionals, first of all. How was the pandemic for you? I introduced
So who
Devika
goes
ma'am
first?
first, so I think it's fair that I begin with Devika ma'am. Okay.
Well, the pandemic, of course, was completely unprecedented and unexpected, and I think we all took a hit before we scrambled up. And of course, depending on the resources that we have, I think we did better or worse. So most of us with safe homes and a steady source of income, access to healthcare, and a network of friends and relatives to call upon, I think we did better, and I really can't complain. I really can't complain. I had access to everything I needed. Of course, there's some books, etc., were difficult to find. There were some little niggling problems here and there, but definitely I am not complaining at all. Um, yeah, and the main source of worry, definitely, and I think you put your finger quite rightly on it, was students. I mean, it was about students that one thought the most in the early days. And it was about students one felt glad when it seemed like, or we were told falsely, that the pandemic was receding. It was about them who we worried most when the second wave hit really hard, and at that point we started worrying about their families as well. So and yeah, you are also right about how how institutions, research institute, I work in a research institution. It's a very small institution. So it's very intimate, the number of students are not high, the number is not high. And most of them stay on campus in the hostels. They have their rooms there. And I can see very well, I mean, they're like nesting birds, so each room is unique. I mean, you go to a hostel room, every room is decked up uh, in its own specific way. They have nested there. That's clear. So to suddenly be to order people out of those rooms, sound feels like the worst thing. It's like kind of like what should I say? I don't know. There's a word called dishoming. There's no word I think, but maybe we should invent one. Dishoming would be the kind of and that would be the kind of violence that the pandemic required of authorities to do. And how that was done is very important, I think. I mean, there are so many different ways in which you can do it without collapsing into this disforming mode of violence. Now, at C.D.S, I think we did rather well. I mean, we were conscious of the fact that many students could not go back home. Simply could not. We were too scared to send them back home because C.D.S has a lot of students who come from extremely underprivileged backgrounds, from very distant parts of India where there is no internet. And we were certain that if they went back, their studies would be affected, their morale would be affected. So, in fact, we actually defied authorities and took the decision to let a fairly large number of students to stay back. Everybody who had the wherewithal to go back were, of course, asked to leave. But those who did not have that wherewithal were permitted to stay on. We took special permission. We spoke to the authorities about the situation and convinced them, so they stayed back. And we actually managed to tide over till now without much damage. In fact, there was one little episode in the middle, and that came out of an extremely privileged young man who just refused to go home, and who just could not just bear to stay confined in the campus, and he did something wrong. So, but that was a small episode which we managed to contain. But otherwise, nobody fell ill. People were protected, and there is high-speed internet in the hostels, so we were able to continue classes, steadily, and things are not so bad. So we turned the guest house into a quarantine space. So some student when the quarantine when the restrictions were relaxed a bit in the middle, some of the PhD students who had to work on campus, who needed computer facilities, etc., they were allowed to come back. Of course, quarantined in the guest house for 7 days and allowed to come back. Yeah, so I think we managed, but I'm not that happy because you really miss seeing students in class. And
Very
C.D.S
true.
there is a lot of interaction. It happens in casually on the road here there. All that is deeply missed.
Very true. Nishi, could you give us an overview of how B.K.C college used to look like before and
Yes,
around March 2020?
right. Mine is a predominantly undergraduate college. It's called Brahmananda Keshab Chandra College. It's named after the 19th century reformer Keshab Chandra Sen. It was set up in around 1956, and we do have a couple of postgraduate classes as well. We're affiliated to the West Bengal State University, and my college is located in the suburbs of Kolkata. And as I know, I agree with Devika when she says the pandemic is absolutely unprecedented. We never ever thought, I mean, it seems like a nightmare. It still seems like
Very
a
true.
nightmare, that maybe I'll get up from it and things would. I mean, it seems bizarre. I think I always find that word very aptly descriptive of what we have been through since last year. We do have a women's girls hostel in our college, but we didn't have too many students staying there. Most of our students are local, maybe from the northern part of West North 24 Parganas district. We have many people coming, but we did have a few people staying in the hostel. And my college shut down. I still remember, I think it was the 17th of March, which was the last date when we went in
Yeah.
to college. And immediately after that, the hostel was cleared out, and uh, the students were asked to leave. They had to leave, and we went. I remember it very well that when this began, I didn't realize this would be such a long term kind of a thing, because I think none of us had ever imagined this is how it's going to turn out to be. And the first thing that came to my mind is most of our students, a large section of my students belong to underprivileged section. Many of them are first generation learners, so staying at home, not many, most of them have problems with they don't have computers. Many of them don't have smartphones. I mean, now many of them had to get one. There's just one smartphone at home for everyone who is working from home. So initially there was a lot of problem. I do remember, I think with my students in the English department, things were a bit better. There were only a few who were having these problems and couldn't join in to class. They couldn't get data recharges and things like that. So uh, we were, I began teaching immediately the next day, because I thought that would be a nice way of being connected with the students. And also there was something else in my mind, that I needed to complete the syllabus at one particular point of time, because I didn't realize it would go on for such a long
Yeah,
time. So
true.
yeah, so I was thinking, I had the syllabus in mind, so I have to complete it at a particular point of time. So I thought, I'll just start taking. I asked them, and they said they are interested. A few of them were interested. So uh, I thought,
How
so
was that
let's.
like? This is a question actually that I'd like to ask both of you, because both of you were set with a particular syllabus to finish as professors, as professionals, as deadlines given by the admins to give to your students, and there are a lot of things to be met within a semester, and there is all this chaos going on. So I would like to know actually from both professors, how was this process
Yes,
like?
the entire process was strange. I mean, first of all, I was learning these using of these new platforms, most of which I've never heard before, never used before. The same with my students. And initially, we were not required to take regular classes. I was beginning, and a number of other teachers like me were beginning simply because they wanted to be connected. So it was difficult in the sense that, first of all, talking to blank screens. I mean, I even find it even difficult now, because we're still going doing the same thing. We are still in the online mode. It's been very, very difficult doing that. Our examinations were deferred because of the fact that we had to come to terms with the way things were. But yes, we had, since the examinations were deferred, we had time, to kind of adjust to the whole scenario, and we had to help find ways and means to help students who could not afford what they needed in order to attend these online classes, or even take the online examinations. So we had to work on an institutional level, where we decided to build up a corpus of funds which we teachers would contribute as and when we
Oh,
could, and we would be identifying students who were unable to buy a smartphone, unable to get data recharges. And we slowly, and it took us time to build this up, but we did this, because without this, a number of students would not be able to take the examinations. Mostly, we also did something else before the examination. At least from my department, from the English department, we did this on a regular basis. We called up students who had registered, to find out whether they're going to be there. Maybe they were not in the classes, but we wanted to make sure that they would take the exams, because we didn't want out anyone to miss out on the examination, on a semester or on a year, simply because they did not have the facilities needed to take the examination. So we made it a point to call up each and everybody, whoever was not responding, to make sure that that person would take the examination, do everything that was needed. We had to regularly meet students, have these big Google meeting done, just to teach them the modality of the online examination, how to uh, convert a document into a PDF, and all of these, each and everything we had to take kind of sessions. We had these sessions where we had to teach them how to do. As I said, most of our students are not technologically savvy, they're not technically savvy at all. So we had, and as I said, they don't have access to computers. Most of them were accessing things from their smartphone if they had one. And during the first phase, I couldn't even tell them to go to a cyber cafe to get things done. Afterwards, say during December or January, then they were able to go. Before the second wave, they were able to go. If they didn't have a smartphone, they could, go to a cyber cafe, get it scanned, and get it mailed. But before that, they couldn't even do that. So these were lots of things, issues which we, had to sit together, think, and work out ways in which we could make sure that nobody misses an examination just because they don't have the resources. In spite of it, there have been students who have missed out because, because of various issues at home. There have been one or two, we, in spite of the fact that we constantly, kept asking them, there are not everybody comes forward, right, telling us about their various financial problems. There have been, I think, one or two students who have decided they're going to take a break. I mean, they're not going to use that year at all, and maybe later on.
Oh,
But with students, there's been a lot of problems even with the online classes. As Devika was saying, we miss the interactions with the students because um, it's not just classroom teaching, it's not just me talking and they listening, but a lot of things happen otherwise beyond the classroom, in the corridor, in seminars, in the playground. These interactions had all gone, and even very few students started appearing for the online classes because of the various problems that I told you. So that was when I started recording my classes. I've never done this before, but I started recording my classes and making these recordings available to students because uh, many had to get some work. Many could not attend at that specific time. So in the hope that maybe at some later point of time they could hear the videos and put them to use. And I've
very
seen
true.
students thanking me for that. So that is one practice which I began, and I continue that even now.
And I think that's very much needed in this time.
Mm,
Devika ma'am,
yeah,
uh, could you expand on some pedagogical modifications that you
yeah.
had to implement during online classes?
Yes, for us, of course, things were easier because we were, using the online mode a little more even before. Moodle, for example, was familiar to students, were familiar with Moodle. Um, Assignments were accepted online even before, so those were not such a problem. Exams were a problem, that was there, but generally it wasn't so hard as far as the assignment part was concerned. Teaching, yes, teaching. So I think what I did was to record my lectures, put them all, send them, email them, and ask them to listen to these lectures a couple of times, and fix a meeting every week. I mean, if I send them a recording a week, I would wait for 3 days and send them another link for a meeting. And I just told them to write down everything they didn't understand or any
Uh,
question that they
True.
had.
Hmm.
Hmm? And this was very, very effective because, um, first of all, I think I teach economic history to MA students. It's not a big class, which is also an advantage.
The
But
course is no
I,
joke for sure.
it's not a, it's an optional course, but it has like something like, it had something like 12, 13 students out of a total of 20, 21 students. So these students were able to listen. I mean, normally they would listen to a lecture only once, but in this case, they were able to listen to it like 2 times, 3 times. So they were able to ask much better questions. And I've been teaching this course since 2013, and I think last year I got the best questions. Yes, and this was actually great. And also, students who don't speak English or are, have a problem with English, who are simply intimidated by our Indian elite English. Uh, which does not have much marks of regional languages, that kind of students started asking questions in chat boxes, which I think was great, because you don't have to now, talk in class. You can just ask a question in a chat box or send you an email. A lot of them wrote questions on email to me, which I picked up in the class when we met. So this to me was very good. The same thing, I also teach research methodology, a kind of introduction to the social science, a general methodological introduction to the social sciences to my PhD, our PhD students, the first year coursework. Here again, but the difference I can tell you is the MA students they come from a far more privileged background. They are more tech savvy and used to and anyway they were at C.D.S for a year even before. I mean, the face-to-face interaction part was already done. The new students, that is the PhD, last year's PhD batch, of course, did not have any interaction, unfortunately, with teachers. Though the library, we're still keeping the library open for them so they can work in the library anytime. But the
Oh,
human interaction with teachers has not happened. There we've had issues, because again the same, what I did was, I did, instead of recording, I basically recorded the PowerPoint and I basically used it in class, and then send them the PowerPoints, you know along with the recording of the class. So the class was recorded and the PowerPoints were both shared.
mm,
And after every class, I had another session, because I had that with the PhD students already. Like, I would give my lectures would be in the morning, and the afternoon my office would be open for any student to come and talk about. Because you see, the problem is most of our students are students of economics, and methodology is the last thing that economists are taught at the undergrad or even the graduate level. So when they come, it's a totally confusing bunch of things that they learn, that they hear. I mean, hearing about the philosophy of social science is kind of intimidating at the beginning. So I leave the afternoons open. My office is open in the afternoons to students of that class who might want to talk more about these lectures. So that's already established practice. I just replicated that online. So after every class, I had set up a session where students could ask. So this is what I told them: listen to it. If you don't understand any part of it, just write down that part. And if you have questions, fine, do that. Give me questions, but tell me what parts you don't understand. Let me explain it to you better. And then, if you have further questions, etc., we will, you can raise it in the face-to-face interaction. So this is how it was done, and I think it was more effective in the MA. Even PhD students have told me that it is all right, but again, it all depends on how many people listen to the lectures more than 2 times, etc. So that it all depends on how much effort a student can put in. But you have to remember, I always remember this, that see, until the pandemic, the internet was not really, largely for most young students, a source of pleasure, not
Absolutely.
a place of working, place to work in. So, I think we have to be kinder to students. You have to wait for them to get used to the fact that online interactions are also for work, not just for pleasure. So I think, well, in the coming years, students will get more used to it. But again, what is lacking, and I think it's going to severely affect our emotional and mental health, is the fact that we are not interacting with each other face to face. So now what I do is, in every lecture, I start a little early, and I have everybody switch on their cameras, and then we
oh,
chit chat for like some 5-6 minutes.
mm,
We just talk and joke and laugh, and spend 10 minutes discussing the state of the world, and generally sharing our stories, etc., etc., for some 10 minutes. And only after we get into class, that has worked. And of course, every teacher at C.D.S has keeps their phone on. All the students are told that And when in fact somebody got infected on campus, all 64 people who were staying on campus had to be tested. So C.D.S took the, made sure that no financial burden was imposed, and the people with financial resources could pay back the price of the RCPTR test in 3 installments. The others had were granted a concession. They could test free. So those things were done. So generally, and as far as dates etc. are concerned, we have made sure that some amount of flexibility should be always should always be made available. While of course there were problems. I'm not saying everything was hunky dory. There was copying, there were, and of course, and but instead of coming down like a sledgehammer, which would have happened in normal times, honest truth, it would have happened, because we are a research institute and we don't expect people who have reached the PhD level to plagiarize or copy, worst of all. So we would have come down very hard if it were normal times, but these are harder times. So we had a discussion with the students who, who who went wrong, made sure that they offered apologies, etc., and dealt
Devika
with
ma'am,
the issue in a better way.
you mentioned a few things that, a few positives that would not have occurred to me. The fact that shy people can now ask questions, or the fact that people of all ages are becoming acquainted with technology. Actually, have you noticed any positives emerge from this new normal?
Positive? I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
I was asking Nishi if she mentioned or if she noticed some similar positives coming out from the new normal.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I don't think I saw anything positive. Classroom teaching is a different thing altogether. I mean, lots. There are some students who ask questions. Most of them don't. Most of them, I mean, Devika teaches. Since she teaches postgraduate or PhD, she has students asking, keying questions in the chat box. I very rarely have that. Um, in the classroom, what would happen, at times you look at a student's face and you kind of understand whether he or she has understood, or whether you need to make things easier. And I think that would work better there. Here I find very few students, most of them don't use the chat box, but they prefer one to one. Maybe in a WhatsApp they'll just send me some kind of question they have, or something that they want to be answered. I don't think there is anything positive, as even Devika said. This social interaction of students with themselves, students with teachers, that is something very, very important. And the pandemic has taken that off, and that has actually affected the mental health of quite a number of students, because not everybody has the same kind. Even Devika said this right at the beginning. We are privileged. Not everybody has the same kind of home atmosphere. Many of them couldn't work at in the house, because it's a small place, very lots of people inside, everybody working from home. So for a lot of people, I have had students reaching out because they were having issues, mental health issues. So I don't think there is, yes, there's a lot of dependence on the internet. And as Devika said, this is something which I keep on telling my students, that earlier on you were just using the internet just for pleasure, just to do social networking. But right now, I keep on telling them that this is your classroom right now. Your smartphone is your classroom. Not everyone has advanced smartphones, so they usually use it to play games and things like that, to listen to songs. And I keep telling them, uninstall all of this, because you need it, because all of them, as I said, are accessing my classes from their smartphone. So I keep telling them that you need to have certain platforms to use. you know so and earlier on, I never shared any material with my students. I always asked them to find material for themselves. But since the pandemic began, a number of people started having, I realized that they could not access it, so I had to provide links or whatever material I could. The PowerPoint is something that we used even before in class. And even earlier, when there was this actual classroom teaching, I always made it a point to mail the PowerPoint. The students always wanted. Otherwise, they would sit in the class, try to click photographs of the PowerPoint. So I would always tell them, don't do that. That's very disturbing. So after I finish my class, I'll mail you the PowerPoints. I used to do that before. I do that even now. Right. So I think we are making available a little bit more of written material than I used to do before. I used to want them to do things on by themselves, but I now realize that most of them are having problems. So I don't think there's anything positive for the students at this point of time. I mean, I don't, because as far as my students are concerned, the kind of students that I interact with on a regular basis, for a number of people it has been very, very difficult. Also with falling ill, falling sick because of COVID, being hospitalized, people at home falling sick.
Hell.
Yes, so all that happens, and then you have examination schedule, and this is the first time, for the internal examination, we did make concessions for people who had fallen sick or whose family members had fallen sick. We never did that before, but we had to do it at this point of time. With the internal examinations we could do that, but with the end semester, which is a university examination, we could not do that because we had to stick to the university schedule. So
Yeah.
I don't think that there is anything positive coming out of it, excepting the fact that maybe my students get to listen to a lot of other people who are talking their lectures, etc., not in Kolkata, but from all over the world. Excepting that, I don't see anything. And as Devika said, these social interactions where they mingle in their peer group, where they talk to us, where yeah, beyond the classroom, they come and talk to us not only about what we are teaching, but also various problems that they have, and those are things that we miss out these days. So I don't think, I mean, for students, I mean, I keep telling this, that I would never have wanted to be a student at this point of time.
I
I
can
think
relate
that
to that.
they have been
Oh,
the very badly affected.
Being a student, I can relate to that. I mean, the fact that some people can hear your classes is like a small silver lining to a very big black cloud. For Devika ma'am, I think C.D.S sort of began partially open around February 2021. Now that the campus is opening, what sort of permanent changes have you noticed in campus life?
no,
Few
actually, it
things.
is not fully opened yet.
Yeah,
We still we don't have external visitors at all. We don't have classes face to face. We wanted to, and early this month, we had planned, but no, the government is very firm on that, so we can't have those classes. And so, there's no normalcy yet. There is really no normalcy yet. And my heart goes out to the students when you think that, this is the time you fall in love. You make friends, you make your best friends. You go to your friends' room, and I hope people realize how absolutely important physical touch and proximity, and how much the body matters. In you're becoming a human being, because you see, this is the time when you actually mature as both a human being and a citizen. And to think that our students have this catastrophe has hit us at this time, at that age of their lives, is truly heartrending, I must say. I mean, it doesn't really. I don't know how one can fall in love online just like that. I don't know. If you can't fall in love with your classmates, or your batchmates or seniors, or what's the use? And then serious, this another thing I want to stress, because see, that C.D.S accepts students from very diverse backgrounds, and students from extremely underprivileged backgrounds who may not have the requisite. Because you see, the problem is always confidence. The problem is that now, when we select students, we are clear that they have that spark in them. That spark in them that can actually develop into a proper social science orientation, or research orientation. You find an analytical spark in a student, and that's why you pick them for research. And the barrier usually is confidence. And people who come from far away, who can't speak English, who haven't been at metropolitan universities, or have been at the margins of metropolitan universities, are always challenged. But then at CDS, usually what happens is in the course of one semester, they have interacted with so many people. They've interacted with their seniors. They interacted with teachers. They've made full good use of the library. They've been exposed to so many things. There is an exponential growth in confidence. You can see that. And after the first semester, which is very tough, it's very tough. So you grapple very hard with it. If you come out of that and you can see this huge, enormous, and this has been the greatest pleasure of working in that institution. We've had, for example, one of the lowest dropout rates when it comes to underprivileged students. Huh? You can see them just blossom, and that pleasure, I fear for this batch. I really fear that is not happening, because usually at the end of the first semester, people know that you are out of the MA mode, the where you mug up your books and you just reproduce and get away with it. You usually students are all clear that that is not what they're going to do for the rest of their lives. I fear for our present batch, because we simply have not had the opportunity to grow like that. So we are doing our best to make up, but let us see. I mean, I'm just still hoping against hope that they will make up in the subsequent years.
You know, we're sort of crossed the half an hour mark, so I think I'll just last with some closing comments. I'd like to ask, from your entire experience of this 1.5 years of managing this horrid, unprecedented milieu, would you have any tips for how, for reform, how students and professors can navigate through this period, assuming it continues for a few more months? Anything that we learned in this period that we can,
Well,
put to
I can
practice?
only say that I realize that above everything, we have to prize the mental health of our students. That's primary. I mean,
Absolutely, I agree.
that's what we know as mothers at home, and that's now what I know as a teacher.
Absolutely. I mean, all of us, I mean, both of us agree on that because the students have been badly hit. My third semesters, you said about how, after the first semester they come into their own. I've noticed my third semesters, I don't even, initially I never recognize their voices. Otherwise, when they are answering, we know just the sound voice, we know which student it is. So we have not seen them, they've not seen us. So absolute no social interaction. So the mental health definitely of the students is something that we all need to be concerned with. So I really don't know how we are going to handle this. I mean, I cannot talk of any reform at this point of time. I'm not sure how that's going to be done, but
I
yes,
don't
I
mean
agree
reform
with
to
Devika
be,
completely.
I don't mean reform to be a political word or anything. I
No, no,
just
no, no,
want,
not a political. I mean, in terms of teaching and pedagogy, in terms of it, we're trying, to go work slowly with things, but the mental health of students is something that is, we hope, I mean, I don't know, maybe we we think that things will, if things remain like this, then maybe here in West Bengal, colleges and schools will reopen after Diwali. So
oh,
just waiting to watch how things are, but we're trying. I mean, I think one of the only things that we can do is say at this point of time, to which is something we constantly tell our students and tell ourselves as well, is to hold on and maybe make the best of whatever we can. I mean, apart from that, I really don't have anything else to say.
I do think that the fact that the city set up the fund and Devika ma'am is sort of has collapsed her office space and her home space to allow questions to be answered whenever. I think these few instances really show how even in this horrible time we can count on some
Yeah, we're
professors.
always available for the students. I mean, they can call up any point of time, mail, WhatsApp, anything, just to reach out. That's something that
Yeah.
we've been telling them from the day, college closed down and we went into the online
No,
mode,
and
that
we have,
always
yeah, and we have also helped. C.D.S has a very large alumni network. So some students at the peak of the pandemic, second wave, when their families were affected and they needed help, the C.D.S alumni network was actually able to help. So we have. I mean, I think most of us, we are all trying. Yeah, just
Thank you
just
for trying.
keeping.
Thank you for joining.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Thank you for being here, Devika ma'am. Thank you, Nishi, for your time this evening. We will wind up now. I'd just like to end with a reminder that Tell Me Your Story calls for submissions on the story prompt homemakers. If you think your story is good enough, it may be published by Amazon. The deadline for that is 20th September, so there's exactly a week to go. Registrations are also open for the writing program Season 3 in association with Simon and Schuster. Find the details for both on tellmeyourstory.biz. That's tellmeyourstory.biz. Our next session is tomorrow. We are going to move away from homes as communities and going to discuss India as a whole. We have a solo discussion tomorrow with Captain B.K. Sharma, VGM. He is currently retired after more than 30 years of service to the Indian Navy and Indian Army. The topic for that is making of the motherland, sacrifices at the frontier. So we need to really start to explore the concept of India as home. For now, of course, we will come and we and I will take your leave. Thanks, Professor, for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you to our
Bye
audience.
then.
Stay well.